yako engineer. Wewe umetalika tena unaandika mabarua huko uguzi huko magalaga kidogo tu. Bana nini wewe? Kwa wewe bana. Hata kama kuja huko si ataenda KU. Hiyo pia ni mbaya. Ni kweli. Ni kweli. Nani na wenzenu mkuja tena kila sawa. Wewe upanga hapo. Ndio ulikuwa unataka Asante. How are you? How are you, my friend?
Very fine.
How then do we manage to boost our exports if the local production, which majorly depends on the loans that we get from the commercial banks, and those loans now you see the way the rates are so high. So therefore we are indirectly or directly killing the production in our country. And now what we are talking about, the exports that we want to bank on, we can't achieve it because of the high rates, the central bank rates. And you're saying that we let the market just determine the rates.
I think it's true. Monetary policy has been tightened, and it has been tightened to respond to the circumstances that we were in. Inflation was high, and it was high for external reasons, which we have explained, the Ukraine war and the Russia war, which led to increase in commodity prices. And every central bank around the world, it's not just us, including the US, have had to tighten their monetary policy. And the interest rate regime is quite high, even in the US and others. Our own central bank had to tighten monetary policy also because of high inflation. So we have now contained inflation. It's now 6.3. It's coming down, the rates are good, so at least things are going to be better. And with the stability that we see in the exchange rate, and we see not that central bank is not likely to stay in that for a while. I think it's monetary policy, which is independent, will review the information available and will make adjustments as and when necessary. So when I was speaking about exchange rate, competitive exchange rate, which is different from interest rate. Yes, and I thought we have understood me on that front.
There's a problem with the. Why don't you think that if we stop defending the exchange rate, we stop actually defending it, and we just let it just flow to an extent where the dollar even hits 250 shillings. Then in such a situation, two things will happen. Number one thing that will happen is that our debt will balloon. Just listen, Mheshimiwa, this is serious economics. Yeah, and you'll get to know about it here. Now, if we leave it, then one of the impacts is that our debt will seriously balloon, and therefore we can decide and say that we will not pay the debts. There's nothing that they can do. And number two, if we are not paying the debts, and the exchange rate is high, which means that the imported goods, we will discourage consumption of imported goods. And therefore, we will treat the foreign absorption or the absorption, the imports, the absorption from the imports. We will discourage it and we will encourage domestic production, because the moment we stop consuming the imports, we will now be encouraging consumption of domestically produced goods, and that will make us grow. That is the only thing that will make us grow as a nation. Shimiwa, do you understand? Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. First, Mr. Speaker, I want to rise to support this motion on an intellectual point of view, or from a scholar's point of view. And number one, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Chairman Budget Committee, Honorable Ndindi Nyoro, for the great work that he has done on this supplementary budget, and also members of the Budget Committee. Number two, Mr. Speaker, the essence of creating a budget is for money to flow in the economy. And the shortest and the best way to grow an economy, Mr. Speaker, is to inject more money into the system. And that is through a budget, Mr. Speaker. We remember, Mr. Speaker, during the Great Depression in the United States of America. And at this point, I would like members to keenly listen to me. Those who are walking, please sit down and listen to this information. Mr. Speaker, during the Great Depression, that the economy of this world, the global economy, the American economy was being assaulted, and it is considered as the greatest downturn that almost brought the United States of America's economy to its knees. During the leadership of the then President Franklin D. Roosevelt, Mr. Speaker, the causes of this depression, number one, was the crash into the stock market, and number two, the collapse of the banks. And in such a way that in 1933, Mr. Speaker, there was 25% rate of unemployment in the United States, followed by over 5,000 banks collapsing. Mr. Speaker, what was the solution to this? There was the great researcher and an economist from the Great Britain that I love referring to. Mr. Speaker, he was consulted, and his name is John Maynard Keynes. Keynes was born in 1883 and died in 1946. Mr. Speaker, Keynes came up with a theory called the Keynesian theory. That, I know Mheshimiwa Shakil is not understanding what I'm saying, so he's saying that's all. There's nothing you can say because you have, okay, be there with your liquid intelligence. Mr. Speaker, now the Keynesian theory stated clearly. Mr. Speaker, John Maynard Keynes came up with a theory called the Keynesian theory that advised that we inject more money into the economy, as we are doing now through the budget. And injecting more money into the economy means you are creating more demand, because if a common man in Soweto, in Embakasi East constituency, has money in his pockets, this man will go and do shopping, will spend. That is called the trickle-down effect, because it is coming from up, not bottom up. That is, now, Mr. Speaker, when there was more money, when there is more money into the pockets of the people, people will spend more. And as people spend more, Mr. Speaker, the demand increases. With an increment in demand, there will be an increment in supply. Or rather, if you like to put it, with an aggregate increment in the aggregate demand, there will be a simultaneous aggregate increment in the aggregate supply. And when the two meet, as economists will tell you, you create what we call the macroeconomic equilibrium. Mr. Speaker, I support this budget with all my body parts and organs. Thank you.
Sasa zimeambia wacheni mchezo.
Tunafunga watu
unaenda wapi? Tunapeleka mabusu peke yake.
Court did say that the local brews are not illegal. These are part of our culture, part of the traditional, the African jurisprudence. Okay, and coming up with laws that are protecting these local brewers, because for a person to resolve to be selling changa or muratina or busa, this is a person who has reached rock bottom, and this is a person who needs salvation, the economic salvation. And therefore, what do you do as a leader? Before we say that we want to ban these brews, and these brews, when you look at how they are manufactured, is through fractional distillation, and they are always very pure, and they open the mind. But we don't encourage excessive consumption of these local brews. You consume for thy stomach's sake, okay? Just a little for the road. But the government needs to provide solutions in terms of jobs, so that at least those who are consuming so much of these local brews, so the consumption of the local brews, the government must provide solutions through provision of jobs, because an idle mind is a devil's workshop. When a comrade is there consuming, which means they lack jobs. If somebody starts consuming in the morning, they don't have jobs. So we need to provide jobs, and even for those who are also selling, they have children they're taking care of, provision of food, rent for themselves, and also for their own growth, right? Paying school fees to for their children. So the government must come up with measures before even going deep into that. But I don't support that excessive consumption. And for the brewers who are brewing and adding certain things like formalin, that you are already getting preserved as you are walking, that is promotion of death. That is not good. Okay.